Hey y'all, I'm Joseph Franklin. I'll be talking to you about my senior thesis, which was about water issues and solutions in the state of Texas and some of the plains regions that surround us. So this topic is pretty near and dear to most of us Texans because, and especially out here in West Texas where water is very scarce. So uh, it's something that's very important to us, especially because water dictates so much of what we do in the state. Um, Water is a huge part of all of our industry, whether that's agriculture or agribusiness, farming and ranching, and oil and gas. All of that has to do with water, and water is just a very necessary resource for us here. Texas has a lot of different water resources within the state. We draw from at least two different aquifers, and we have numerous different rivers, lakes, and streams that we use for our water resources, such as here in Lubbock, we use Lake Allen Henry as our primary water source. Um, and then the numerous different rivers and water systems that we have in Texas that are such a big deal for us and for our everyday lives. So, uh, the interdisciplinary nature of this or this thesis is just a huge thing. Water resources cannot be looked at from one specific discipline. So my concentrations are agribusiness management, natural resource management, and wind energy, and all three of them just fit together perfectly for this water resources project. Um, you couldn't look at one without the other. Natural resource management and wind energy both take the side of renewables and look at how renewable energy sources can help us cut down on water resources and how we use our water resources. And they also look at some of the different uses of our water resources and how they can be changed or kind of redone to make sure that we're successfully stewarding our water resources. And agribusiness management can take a huge look at the way water resources are used in the agricultural side of the water issue. So a main thing is that this problem is a complex problem, one of those ones that we talked about earlier this semester in class, and it just absolutely cannot be looked at without looking at another discipline. Because if one did try and use just one discipline to tackle this problem, they would just come up with more and more questions that could only be answered by another discipline, or they could answer a question, but it might not be answered as well as it would need to be. So the disciplinary perspectives, like I stated, were for me wind energy, agribusiness management, and natural resource management. Wind energy does not play a huge part in my research or in my thesis because I focused mainly on the natural resource management side and the agribusiness management side. Um, Wind energy can play a big part in it. Our water or our electricity systems use huge amounts of water to produce the power that we do use. Um, and almost every method of power generation uses water to get power to the customer, to our homes. So it's not just us turning on a faucet that impacts our water usage. It's also when you flick on a light switch or plug your phone in or do something like that. It's a big part of um, our water use. And so with that, wind energy can take a good stand at looking at how it can impact our electricity use, because wind energy is a near 0% water use power generation source. So there's almost zero water used in wind energy. And that's a huge thing, especially in areas as out here in West Texas, where water isn't as plentiful as somewhere, say, in Central Texas, where there's a lot of lakes, rivers, and streams, and even the Edwards Aquifer. Um, so agribusiness management, a way to look at that is to look through some of that I looked at that is to look through some of the numbers of how um, oil and gas, or how agribusiness and agriculture use water. And in the state of Texas, agriculture is one of the main um, water users. Our farming and ranching is a huge part of the GDP in Texas. And we Texans love our agriculture, whether that's on a big scale for a feedlot, or whether that's at the smallest scale on a 2 acre place where somebody has a cow. Each cow takes vast amounts of water to grow and get it where it needs to be. And if the person doesn't sell it for food, that cow just uses more and more water over its lifetime. whether that's in its feed, its grazing, or even just in its own water consumption. So it's a big thing that can be looked at. So the agribusiness side looks at different the different uses of water throughout that industry, but it also looks at different methods that can be used to combat um, overusing our water resources, such as dryland farming, different forage methods for ranch animals, and a whole number of different things that can help us look at water usage differently from an agricultural standpoint. Uh, so, and from the natural resource management side, this was the biggest side of my research. Natural resource management takes a direct look at how water resources are used, what kind of water resources are being used, the levels that come from those water resources, where they are for now, where they will be in the future, where they have been in the past, and all sorts of different things that come from that. Natural resource management also looks at the different kinds uh, of toxins and the different things that are going into our water systems, and it looks at the uses of water. It takes a very broad look at the usage of water, but it also looks at it from an environmental standpoint and shows just where each water resource is and where it stands and where it can be for the future. If you will, natural resource management is kind of the overarching. So as I stated, natural resource management is kind of an overarching uh, kind of discipline that takes a look at all the levels, all of the different uses of water, and it also looks at kind of being that just about every different aspect of water resource usage. And so some of the findings the biggest things that I found within my research were that there's a lot of usage of water. Our state uses vast amounts of water, and it needs to be curtailed. We waste a lot of water here in Texas, whether that's in our homes or whether that's through agricultural usage. Um, Tons and tons of water, or tons of, I guess, thousands of gallons of water are wasted every single day within the state. And whether that's just from, like I said, from somebody leaving a tap on, or somebody trying to feed a cow that might not be the best method of feeding that cow or even watering that cow. So it's a huge issue within Texas, um, and our water resources are constantly changing. So one of the biggest findings that I found was that with the changes of our water systems, we need different legislation to be passed. A lot of the legislation regarding water issues in Texas is old, and it needs to be re-examined to ensure that the legislation that we have now regarding our water resources is correct and accurately helping our water resources to maintain those resources so that we can have them for the future and so that we're being good stewards, because the main goal for us is to be good stewards. We want to be able to have our resources, but we also don't want them gone, and we want to be able to use them to the best of our ability. So that's the big goal here. Um, so the main goals were the main findings were looking at the different levels of the resources, um, taking or examining them from where they were in the past, where they are now, and where they can be in the future, and looking at the implementations that are being put in place to make sure that our water resources aren't dropping or going past where they should be. Another big finding, was the issue of some things such as um, water districts and different methods of drawing from personal usage. The state of Texas is covered. I believe it's over 89% of the state is owned by private land. So a lot of that looks at usage through oil and gas that's coming onto somebody's property so that they can pump water for fracking and other issues. And a lot of that also looks at just the private draw of water on people's property, whether that's for watering crops, watering animals, or just for their house for recreation. And so there's a little more legislation. It was found that there's a little more legislation that needs to be done to ensure that we're in a good standing with our water resources in the private sector. But as I stated, industry is also a huge user of water. It's the biggest user of water in the state. And so there's also more legislation that needs to be examined. There are more issues that need to be examined through the use of oil and gas, or through the uses of oil and gas, to ensure that our water resources are being protected and used to the best of their abilities. And so the conclusions that I made were that um, while we do have some solid evidence and some solid data on the issue, there's constantly more data and more evidence coming out, showing where we are with our resources and where we need to be in the future. And there's a lot of different things that can be done, but there's more and more study that needs to be done and is being done by scholars currently to ensure that that's where we need to be. So thank you for letting me describe my thesis to y'all a little bit, and hope y'all have a good year.